New Buddhaware Dhamma Talks. Jeff Hunt presents a talk on some aspect of the Buddha's teaching.
One of the collections of the Buddha's teachings, which is one of the oldest, is called the Dhammapada. And I just want you to think about, well, what is the Buddha actually saying? Because some of the things he says, on the face of it, are very peculiar. Right? You think, what could he mean? So mindfulness is the path to life, and thoughtlessness is the path to death. The mindful are alive, but the thoughtless are already like the dead. Awake and be joyful in mindfulness. Understand the wisdom of the awakened. You know, sometimes you can read something and you think, yes, I've almost got it. Yeah. No, I haven't. And what was it that he said? So, let's read that again. Let me take it a bit at a time. Mindfulness is the path to life, and thoughtlessness is the path to death. The mindful are alive, but the thoughtless are already like the dead. That's quite a strong statement, isn't it? Now, with most of these teachings, of course, you have to be aware of not taking it literally. He's trying to point to something by using a metaphor. So, this business of being alive or being dead. If you remember another spiritual teacher called Jesus, you've probably forgotten all about by now, he said things like, let the dead bury their dead. That was a strange thing to say as well, wasn't it? Because he was also implying that perhaps most people are actually dead, even though they look alive. So, probably a similar thought. Okay, so what do you think it means? Any guesses? Mindfulness is the path to life, thoughtlessness is the path to death. The mindful are alive, but the thoughtless are already like the dead. Yes, Joe?
Just going back to the four virtues with the loving kindness and the compassion, just looking maybe at those two factors. If mindfulness cultivates and awakens those in the mindful, then the thoughtless are still acting in the opposite to those, which perhaps could be a suggestion that because of their lack of humanity they could be almost like dead, if you know what I mean, dead of feeling. So maybe the death is actually saying, I am dead of compassion, I am dead of love at this juncture.
More of I'm just reacting without awareness, something like that, so which is a kind of a death for a human being.
Yes.
Because human beings are capable of more than that, or better than that.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. What do you think, folks? Is that reasonable interpretation?
I think mindfulness is, in essence, living in the moment, isn't it? Or being in the present. And if you waste your life thinking about the future or worrying about the past, then you're actually not living.
That's right, so you may as well be dead in a sense. In that sense, you're dead. Your mind is in the past or your mind is in the future, and it's missing the only thing that's real, which is right now. The thing about the teachings are very often they're either very obvious instructions, or he's trying to put something quite difficult over by using metaphors. And you have to see what it is that he's pointing towards. So it can be quite open-textured in the sense that you might be able to see several different meanings. Shall we read the next part that goes with this? It says, awake and rejoice in mindfulness. Understand the wisdom of the awakened.
I was going to say on the previous one, mindfulness is a path to deathlessness.
Deathlessness.
Yes. Because mindfulness is a path to awakening, isn't it? Which is what he's saying in the next one.
In the next one, yeah.
So those who are not mindful don't see the wisdom of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, so they're not developing in that way. So, following their desires, greed, hatred, you might as well be dead, really, if you're living like that.
It's a kind of an overstatement, isn't it? But he's making a point forcefully. So why rejoice? Do you think one could have a sense of gratitude about mindfulness, being in a mindful state, or just getting glimpses of mindfulness?
I think that the core of all Buddha's teaching is this idea of compassion for all sentient beings. But you need to cultivate mindfulness and clarity and being in the moment before you can actually practice that. So, and that could be a strong motivation for following the path. It should be the motivation, I suppose. And so I think that's also what he's referring to, that there is joy in the fact that you can help other sentient beings once you become more mindful.
There are a lot of words we don't use much anymore. It's some, because of the way our culture is developing, the language is narrowed down. But if we do mean anything by it, we probably associate it with some sort of pleasure, the joy of eating a large chocolate cake, or the joy of the holiday, or the joy of whatever it is. It's something to do with pleasure. Whereas the Buddha is definitely not talking about pleasure in that sensual pleasure in that sense, is he? So it's a kind of a mental joy.
Back to that sympathetic joy.
The sympathetic joy that's used in the Brahma Viharas, yeah. Does that make any sense, or is that something we've lost in our civilization forever? So I've gone down the plug hole of history. No joy, just pleasure. I do wonder about, sometimes I'm going to make a dictionary of dying words, actually, like honour, discipline, maybe gratitude. Doesn't use that often these days. I used the word ingrate the other day, and the person said, ingrate, what does that mean? I said, an ingrate is a person who's ungrateful. Oh, really? How do you spell it? You're English, I'm English, what's going on here? Got time for another one. By watching keenly and working hard, the wise person may build himself an island which no flood can sweep away. The thoughtless person does not care, but the attentive person looks on mindfulness as his greatest treasure. So stay awake, watch and reflect. Work with careful attention. In this way you will find the light within yourself. I'll just take the first part of it, which I quite like. By watching keenly and working hard, the wise person may build himself an island which no flood can sweep away. What does that mean? Can sweep away. In another one of the Buddha's sutras, he talks about the four floods, and desire is one of the big floods that sort of sweeps you off your feet and makes you, quite happy for a little while, and then afterwards comes the hangover and the trouble. It's connected actually with the four Brahma Viharas, or the four great virtues as I call them. Sometimes I call them the four antidotes, because surely he's talking about equanimity, isn't he? So so the question is, the final question for this evening is, how does mindfulness help you to maintain equanimity? And equanimity is mental composure, not being knocked off balance easily. Because that's another word we seem to have forgotten in the English language. I say equanimity and people say, what is that? By watching keenly and working hard, making an effort in meditation, the wise person may build himself an island, which is a metaphor he uses a lot. An island which is a kind of a refuge, an inner refuge from the world, which no flood can sweep away. Yes, Catherine?
When you meditate, you find a place of peace within yourself that you can always return to.
Mm-hmm.
A nice word, refuge, isn't it? An inner refuge, because you don't have to depend on anyone else except yourself. And you're right, you can go.
Or at least depend less on others.
Yes,
yes. There's a place you can go, as it were. Okay, any other point or question?
Actually, it may, as a first step, lead to more anxiety, fear, or anything else because you experience things which you otherwise would not see.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're aware of them, and which is not really getting you into balance at this stage. And only after you see what's happening there, what you see, that you're seeing something that you didn't see before and it is there, then I think in this phase it can lead to greater balance and equanimity in the end. But it's the very end can be the very end of a process.
There are lots of things in the teaching and instructions which would assist you in not judging yourself badly when you come across things that are perhaps initially a bit of a surprise, like not being judgmental, compassion for yourself, understanding that we human beings are all in the same boat, so nobody's perfect. We just don't go around bragging about the weaker side of ourselves, do we? So yes, occasionally, if you are developing self-understanding, then of course there will be times when you will encounter something about yourself that you would not have generally thought of as part of the acceptable self-image. I mean, to discover that maybe you've been very self-centered in your life, don't really want to hear that. That maybe my ego is a bit sensitive and protective, don't really want to hear that. That maybe at times I'm very irritable and snap at people and all sorts of things as I become aware of these things. But the point, of course, is not to judge yourself, it's just to observe that and say, okay, all right, okay. Now I know. So now it's going to start changing. But as you'll also discover good things there, you realise that they're really, good parts to you. There will be times when you are kind or patient or understanding or giving somebody support, and you recognise those as well. But you don't pat yourself on the head, you just notice it.
And then it becomes an island which cannot be swept away.
Yeah, gradually.
Because at that stage, you are aware of things which don't surprise you anymore, disturb you anymore.
Equanimity is very high on the Buddha's scale of values. When he describes the meditational process in fine detail, we pass through something called the four jhanas. The highest one is a kind of pure equanimity when you're just on the edge of nirvana. So equanimity looms pretty large in his higher teaching as well. So it's not something we can just skip over. There's something solid in you which gives you strength, courage, peace.
When you reach that stage, you can be of true value to other people, leading by example, making the right decisions, and not...
As long as they see that they have the capacity for that as well,
yes.
And not, say, oh, well, he must be a guru or something, because then all you do is project it all onto him.
No, but lead by example.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Okay, well, we'll stop there then.
New Buddha Way lets go of East and West and starts afresh in the life we have now. For more information, visit www.newbuddhaway.org.